Hi, I'm Ashley with Campbell. Thanks for investing your time to help your community be a great place to live. Before you watch the video, make sure to click the subscribe button so that we can help you make educated decisions as a board member.
So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Let me make sure that I can get this share button to work as I'd like it. And I'll just ask Ashley to go ahead and confirm that she can see this.
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so as basically stated, we're going to be talking about construction documentation. Now, any of these parts we can certainly go ahead and just make into a course themselves, but we're primarily going to go ahead and focus on these items that you see on your screen right now: plans, contracts, product submittals, change orders, pay apps, RFIs, and OAC meeting minutes. So this is going to be pretty applicable to most medium and large scale projects, but you will have some aspect of each of these items on even a smaller project as well. So these are mainly intros. I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about some key details and give you my experience along the way. And I absolutely welcome some question and answer. We'll definitely have some time for that towards the end, but it is pretty content heavy. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so plans. All right, so this is gonna be the first step of the actual construction process. Now, this is really step two, depending on what sort of project you're dealing with. And step one is really gonna be doing some sort of evaluation or establishing the actual scope. So an example would be basically taking a facade restoration project on a tower, let's say, and the engineer or designer is asked to go ahead and forecast some repair quantities. So you know generally how much this may be. What are you talking about? A $50,000 project or a $500,000 project or potentially even more. Doing some level of due diligence on the front end to narrow the upper and lower bounds of what you intend on having from a bidding standpoint of things is going to be critical. And the more preemptive work you do on the front end, the narrower and tighter, ideally, you can go ahead and have your bidding process and hopefully have a successful project, as far as not being one of those cases where you start off with a small project dollar wise and end up with a bear at the end of it. I'm sure everybody's heard those horror stories, but planning and preparation on the front end when you are not under the gun, so to speak, is going to reap substantial benefits. So some evaluation is performed. A bid form is then developed, and an RFP, request for proposal, is then established by the architect or engineer and sent out to the bidders. Bidders come back. The association goes ahead and makes a decision based upon the normalization of that, and a bid set level of plans then gets turned into a permit set level of plans. If you think about a bid set, it is there to go ahead and give you an intended design. Okay, so this is my vision, so to speak, of what I would like to go ahead and happen. I want to go ahead and do a full-scale removal and replacement of your waterproofing and re-put it back on. That's generally what has to get done there. Plans won't go ahead and give the construction means and methods, meaning the engineer or architect is not going to dictate how many foremen, how many laborers, how many porta potties need to be on site to go ahead and get this work done. The term means and methods is primarily a construction term, and that's going to fall within their wheelhouse of things. Now, plans certainly, as I stated, will be permitted, and that permit is going to be pulled by the contractor doing the work. There will still be a form that will need to be filled out, or it needs to be signed by the owner, so by the association, but it'll still be the contractor's actual permit that is being held with the city, within the municipality. Now, with the plans, I like to go ahead and joke and say that there is truly no such thing as an as-built plan set. Okay, I don't care how simple it is or how complicated the project is. But during the course of construction, you'll start off with a permit set. And on the right-hand side of the actual plans, you'll go ahead and see individual revisions that happen, whether they be city or municipality dictated revisions, or things change in the field for whatever reason, change orders or otherwise. You'll see multiple different revisions that are called construction sets. And then at the very end, you'll have a record set, which will get filed with the city, which theoretically should also be the as-built set. Should be what is truly in field. Some samples of plans. I mean, they could be of any discipline, being architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, interior design, hardscape, you name it. Just showing some more detailed, colorful ones like we have from the reinforcement plans here. But plans are going to be the basis for what you are working against. Okay, now it ties perfectly to contracts. Okay, so contracts in itself, like I said, can also be a class. I am an engineer. I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to give you my end of the spectrum with respect to contracts. So I would first and foremost, I would recommend, depending on the level of detail or how large of a larger project you're dealing with, to go with some pre-established boilerplates or rely upon, let's say, your association attorney to go ahead and do the heavy lifting as far as drafting any sort of contracts or referring to the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, as far as a baseline, or at least harvesting some good details from there. That is a document, or those documents are used on large-scale projects, medium-scale projects. They have been vetted by several different professionals, and I rely upon those in the day-to-day of what we do. One thing that is important for most contracts as well, in dealing with the space, it's mainly going to be no contractual relationship between the design professional and the contractor, unless it is going to be a design build project. So now, if they are going to be separate, that is typically coined as a design bid build. So everyone is separate from each other. If it's a design build, think about the contractor is going in as the prime and is using the design professional as a subcontractor to the contract, or to the contractor. So it is just one point source. Now, certain scenarios that may have a benefit. Most scenarios there isn't a real benefit. So that's why you tend to see design bid build mainly in this space. With contracts, you're also going to go ahead, and the most common part of the AIA that really gets utilized are going to be some of their forms. They have lots of different forms. Most common one is going to be your payment application forms, or pay-apps. This is easy as far as monthly payments are concerned, assuming you're going that route and you're not going with, let's just say, like a % complete, or something that is just going to be on the actual contractors on their own contractual terms, as far as 20 or 30% down, and then you can just do milestone payments there. Now, going to AIAcontracts.org, pretty straightforward. You will see just a list of available contracts. The most common one you're going to come across are going to be the A series and the B series, as you see there. So owner contractor agreements and owner architect agreements. Now is a good time to go ahead and just let you know that architect and engineer are synonymous in this scenario. Okay, so AE is also a common term. So A for architect, E for engineer. They're identical. They're still going to be classified as a design professional. Owner here is mainly going to be, let's say, the property, right? So the property owner, or if you're a developer, so still the land owner. Now, moving over to change orders. So you're actually in the throes of construction right now. You signed the contract. You've already been working on that. And and one thing I do want to go ahead and make mention of with respect to the contract and how the plans tie together. So I am a strong proponent for having the plans actually included as an exhibit within the contract. The reason being is that it's going to be giving the inspecting engineer or inspecting designer way more teeth to understand that, okay, this is part of your contract. This permit set is part of your contract, XYZ contractor, and you need to be perfectly abiding by what is in this plan set. There have been some scenarios that I've unfortunately been a part of where that hasn't been the case. And the association has signed a contract that wasn't even a standard contract, but had made no formal mention of our design plans. So ultimately, that basically puts me in a position where I can't enforce those plans because they're not explicitly shown there. So by having a detailed contract with as many exhibits or whatever provisions you need to go ahead and put in place to reasonably be fair to make sure that everyone's covered, that is going to be critical, because you're going to be falling back upon that in the event there's any discrepancy, in the event that there's any sort of conflict. it's always going to fall back of, hey, what's in the contract? What do the plans show? Let's go back to that instead of just trying to figure out something on the fly in the field. Let's see what what happened when you were in a non-stressed environment. Okay, so now moving over to change orders. So change orders, so you're in the throes of construction and you start on day one, and unfortunately, let's say day two, you get hit with a change order. I know no one here, or in all likelihood, no one here likes the term change order, but I will say that is not always a negative connotation. Change orders can be used to track several other items. Let's say like to be tracked like weather delays, for example, which is a good one to go ahead and keep track of. And believe it or not, there are actual negative change orders. I will say that they're a bit more rare than the more common and ones that have the negative connotation, but still, it is possible. So change orders or COs are either going to be an increase or a decrease in construction scope that are going to need pre-approval by the client. And the main two things you're going to care about are going to be, how does it impact the price? How does it impact the overall time? Because falling back over to the contract, there may be liquidated damages that are going to be specified in the contract if the contractor does not complete their project or their job by a certain date. They may be fined $50, $500, $1,500 a day for any of those delays. So that's going to be critical. Contractors are certainly going to be very mindful of it as well as the association. Now, these are going to be tracked. You're going to have a change order log, which we'll get into shortly. And these are also going to be reflected on the pay apps. You're going to have full transparency. Pay apps is just a common shortening of the payment application, just so everybody's in the know. Now, here's a sample of a change order. As you'll notice on the right, we have that same reference, the AIA document. So document G701. Like I said, they have a lot of nice boilerplate stuff. Even if this gets customized, it usually basically looks about the same. I'll go ahead and state that. In this box over here, I don't know how many of y'all can see it. This is really just talking about what is changing with the price and the time, what we really care about. Execution by the owner or the client is going to be the triggering point to call this an active change order. Okay, because the owner in this scenario is going to be primarily is funding this project. So that is the green light, if you will, for this change order. Now, for a review of a change order of a PCO or possible or potential change order, it should absolutely be sent over to either your owner's representatives or your actual architect or engineer to review the validity of that change order. Now, what I mean by that is whether or not this qualifies as a valid change order. There are times where a contractor may misinterpret the plans, let's say, and think that this is a valid change order when quite actually it isn't. Or there could be an omission in the actual plans, let's say, or the contract that then needs to go ahead and be filled in by a change order. Then that would be a valid change order. Or if the client wants to go ahead and add a certain scope, that's obviously a valid change order as well. What we have seen, at least a few years ago, and less of it now, with all the actual price fluctuations within the construction marketplace for materials, you saw a lot of change orders trying to reflect that, so the contractors weren't basically being held to, let's say, pre-pandemic costs. Let's say for a sheet of plywood, for example, which I know went crazy years ago. So sometimes they'll be stipulated in the contract as far as how much percent change can happen, and if it exceeds that, then it would cause a change order. Same thing would happen if there's going to be a hurricane or something like that. You may track everything with a change order to go ahead and add time alone for a named storm, let's say. In at least South Florida, where I'm sitting, ultimately weather delays happen. They happen more often than we all like. And there's also no good time to go ahead and start a construction project. I will go ahead and state that. Practically speaking, I mean, in the summer times, you're usually only going to have half days because you can have the 2 o'clock rains or potentially a storm. In the winter, you're going to have high winds. So if you're going to be doing anything vertical, then ultimately that's going to be impacted because that's going to have some strict guidelines as to what's the maximum wind speed that can be tolerated to work safely in that environment. Okay, change orders may also impact what's called critical path of the overall project. Critical path is mainly going to be you need to do step 1 before you do step 2, before you do step 3, before you do step 4. You can't just hop, skip, and jump. Now, and there might be items on, let's say, the construction scope that you can go ahead and zigzag and go up and down. But knowing on the front end and the contractor and the other professionals involved, whether it be the design professional or the owner's representative, everyone should be clamoring and stating that this is critical path. This is time sensitive. We need to have a fast review on this to make sure nothing is slowing down during the actual construction project. Now, obviously, if it's too vague, if the change order is too vague or it's not done properly, then fine. I mean, due diligence has to happen, has to be reviewed to make sure that this is going to be valid and it's the right thing to move forward. And if that impacts critical path, so be it. General conditions may also be included on change orders. So the actual cost to keep the trailer there, the dumpsters there, things like that, and pay employee salaries. That may be a percentage usually added to each change order depending on its overall size. Like I said previously, they're tracked in a change order log. And in that change order log, it's going to look something like this. Okay, so you're going to have an arbitrary number that's put to each one of these things, the date of approval, relative description in so many words, like what's actually happening, the cost, the previous cost of previous totals, totals to date, and revised contract amount, how much time are we talking about, and when is the new completion date. These are all going to be really important items that you're going to want to track through the course of the project. And again, these can both be tracked by the design professional or the owner's representative. And just need to figure out who's doing what so they know what lane to go ahead and stay in to get this work done. But you'll notice just coming across, it should be pretty straightforward. If even just looking at that first line item, comparing it to the second line of change order 1 and change order 2, you'll really see how they work together and how it makes it to the finish line there. Okay, switching gears a little bit now over to payment applications. Well, actually, before we get over there, I'll answer a question real fast. It said, do permits need to be changed because of change orders? Now, that's a great question, and they may need to. It depends on the actual permit that was originally pulled. Let's just say you are doing, let's say you're doing a pool deck job, okay? And you're just working on the deck itself, but you have no inclusion for any of the adjacent planters, for example, or the jacuzzi that you may have on there. So yeah, the permit would need to go ahead and be modified to include the actual jacuzzi on there. But ideally, that could just be added onto that same permit number just as a sub-permit there. Nonetheless, that's still going to be the responsibility of the contractor to go ahead and be dealing with as opposed to the owner or anyone else. Another question I'll answer real fast is, all right, what's my feeling about having a project manager before hiring an architect or engineer? Okay, so that is the typical process of going ahead. Like if you don't know how much work or what work you want to go ahead and do, and you expect it's going to be relatively complicated, let's say you're going to have something vertical, you're going to have something horizontal, you're going to have something interior, you're going to have something exterior, a lot of moving pieces. That's going to have a big benefit to going ahead and having a project manager on. But once that scope is ultimately identified, you're really going to be relying upon the architect and engineer to set that scope. Say, okay, all right, well, we're focusing on the exterior. We're going to be replacing the windows or replacing the rails. We're doing something like that, and we're itemizing that out. So think about the project manager as mainly like the quarterback, or it can be the quarterback, and then you're relying upon the engineer for the technicality, and then ultimately the technical representation and even approval of that, because project managers aren't going to be part of the approval process, really. Okay, which one, and the last one I have on here, which one of these documents should be posted to the association website or available for owner inspection? I would, well, with respect to that, I would mainly just lean upon what is quote unquote public record, which is going to be your plan set. Okay, so the approved plan set, the permitted plan set, I mean, that's available for anybody to go ahead and get at the municipality. If you want to go ahead and share that on the website, you're more than welcome to go ahead and do so. Usually the demonstratives are nice. So depending on how architecturally nice it is, you might want to include that there. That tends to go pretty far. We've been part of projects, but we've done some nice renderings as well. Okay, so now moving over to pay apps. So these are going to be submitted by the contractor each month for work performed within that pay period, unless it's otherwise stated in the contract. Like I previously stated, like if there's going to be a certain percent down, or they're going to bill you twice a month, or what have you, something exceptionally unique. But generally speaking, it is just going to be once a month. The pay apps must first be submitted to that inspecting engineer or architect for review for the requested amounts. So this isn't really a financial review. This is mainly focused on, okay, if they said that there was 20 square feet of stucco that they removed and replaced, and the inspecting engineer saw it during the course of the monthly inspections, that on the pay app, there should be 20. If there's going to be 200, that's a problem, right? So it's basically an analysis of the quantities of the work performed. Oh, and then also, I didn't, getting ahead of myself. So like I said, the stucco-based project, if the bulk of it's going to be within that month of stucco work, you expect to see the bulk of that on there and on the continuation sheet. So this is what a sample looks like. Again, we have our friend the AIA. This time it's going to be document G702. Very common. You're going to see this, and you're going to see the continuation sheet. Here is basically just giving you all the information that you need to know, just the high points. This is the cliff notes of what's the contract sum, the net change from change orders, where are we at now, total completed, and retainage. We'll talk about retainage pretty soon. So all this information on the sheet is submitted or filled out and submitted by the contractor, okay? They submit it over to originally first the engineer or architect. So you see in the bottom right of this image, you have the architect's certificate for payment. Again, that could be engineer's certificate of payment. Review and approval for the proposed billing amounts and quality of the work is going to be the responsibility of the architect and engineer. And this would also qualify for any special inspections and things like that. If they fail those, that should also obviously be known to everyone, and that should not be approved work to be for payment to be released. And once this is approved, one thing that's important to understand is that when someone like me goes ahead and certifies this by signing on here, and it doesn't receive a sign and seal, this is just going to be a signature. Once I sign this, I'm not cutting the check. Your designers aren't cutting a check. This is just giving that information then over to the owner to say, hey, contractor did their due diligence and they are billing this much for this month. Your designer has qualified it by going ahead and reviewing the quality and the amount, and they also agree. So because of you have those two check boxes, client, you are good to go ahead and release those funds. A continuation sheet. Okay, this is going to be where you have that detail. And remember when I spoke about the bid form at the beginning of this. So the bid form is going to be an itemized detail of what is this project going to go ahead and include. Okay, you're going to have general conditions. You're going to have, let's say, stucco removal and replacement. You're going to have concrete removal and replacement. You're going to have tile removal and replacement. You're going to have pool removal and replacement, landscaping items, so on and so forth. And those may be broken out into lump sum values. They may be square footage numbers. They may be cubic footage numbers, but each one will be specific. So those initial line items will be brought over to this continuation sheet. Those details are basically schedule of values is the term that's called, but you'll see them reflected on here. One thing that's nice is you'll see the scheduled value. You will see the percent complete. You'll see what they're billing for each period. This is where the first level review starts happening from someone like me. We fast forward to the continuation sheet. We look at our actual data of what we got in the field, where we are with the actual production, and go ahead and qualify that for you. All right, so more pay app details. So, okay, I already hit the first bullet, meaning that this is going to be based off the bid form with added detail. All right, so following AIA standards, pay app review will be by the architect engineer. You'll notice that, all right, so even if you are going to have any owner's representative, or even just or not, you don't see any spot here on the sheet where you ask for a signature. Whereas when we got to, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, when we were on the change order, you notice who are the signers at the bottom of this page here. You have the designed agent. So this would be the architect or engineer. You have the contractor, which would already have their signature on there. And then finally, to make this a live change order, you have the owner showing that this is good to go ahead and proceed. One thing here is if the contractor moves forward preemptively without the owner actually signing this, they are driving a car without their seatbelt. Okay. The association or the owner is under no obligation to go ahead and pay for that service at that point in time, especially if they were outside the loop. Why should they? So having proper paperwork every step of the way is going to be critical for a successful project. Okay, let's get back to the pay app. Okay. Yep, as I stated, so once signed by the AE, it's the owner's responsibility to go ahead and actually deliver the payment. Delays in payment may lead to an overall project delay. That's not a spot you want to go ahead and be in. Contractor will start hitting with delays, and they just start building up that record. Not only does it move out the actual finish line, but there may come with some penalties along the way. Hopefully, with good communication, those can all be avoided. And it should be no surprise to anyone if there's going to be some payment issue along the way. That should be discussed at every meeting whenever possible to make sure that everyone's in the know. I mean, everyone's all on the same team at this point in time trying to get this project done successfully. Retainage, as I briefly mentioned before. So retainage is going to be taken from each payment application. So usually about 10% is held until the end of the project and released following the approved final pay app. So that means if I'm the contractor and I'm going to be submitting for $100 worth of work that I did within this month, I only expect to get paid $90 because 10% of that is being held in retainage. Now, once I get to the end of the project, assuming I've done good work and I've done all my punch list related items, which are just going to be small nicks and bruises that may come just with dealing with a construction project. Once I meet that approval, then is when I have all that money released back to me. And you can see that final bullet here of the final walkthrough and punch list completion is recommended before the release of retainage. And I say recommended because I mean you're going to have your engineer, your architect going ahead and doing that work to give the recommendation to the client, to the association for that release. I mean, certainly you can go ahead as an owner, you can go ahead and release it whenever you want, but I would strongly suggest to lean on your professionals because you don't want to be overextending yourself even from an insurable liability standpoint of things by being the owner. Okay, moving on to requests for information or RFIs. So RFIs are mainly just a documented question for everybody to go ahead and see. It could be amongst the contractors. It could be contractor to owner, contractor to designer, contractor to subcontractors. This could be something as innocent as, hey, what elevation are we building the slab at? Where do you want this wall? Because plan sheet A says this, plan sheet B says that. Believe it or not, designers, and when you have multiple designers, you may have some conflict there. Seen things built at wrong elevations before, and this is why you have the RFI process, to get that clarity prior to. On these projects, when you have a qualified general contractor, they're already doing a plan review even before they get the job, or right when they get the job, to see, okay, well, what questions do I have now? Some of these RFIs that they send over might even yield in a change order if there is, if the design is silent, let's say, on the directive as to what to do, within reason, right? Because remember, the plans are only there for a designed intent. But if there isn't sufficient information for the contractor to go ahead and build it, that's certainly a problem. They'll request that information. RFIs are going to be logged similarly to change orders in a separate tracking log. And the timelines for responses are going to be dictated within the contract and should be dictated within the contract. The AIA allots for a maximum of 5 business days. An RFI sample, I don't expect anybody to be able to read this, but ultimately the question is going to be on the left and the answer is going to be on the right. It's going to state generally what this is about, who's it coming from, the date, what is the actual question, and even attachments can go along with this as well. Now we see RFIs come our way during the course of any construction project. They may just say, okay, well, hey, do you want me to use detail 1, detail 2, or detail 3 for some of these items? Please provide clarity. And then we go ahead and give that answer there and just say, use detail 1. It could be as shorthand as it needs to be to get the point across. All right, so the RFI log sample. Okay, so what we have here is going to be very similar to what we had on the change order log, right? The ID is effectively just the number, the subject, what's it about, the overall status, is it closed, open, late, where are we, on hold, who's it from, received to, so on and so forth. When's it due back? I mean, this is all built, and ultimately you can track this very well. Doesn't seem like some of these questions are getting answered. If anybody could see some of these numbers, you have like 1,100 days. So hopefully you're not going to be in that position, and hopefully your project's not going on for 1,100 days. All right, moving on to submittals. So project submittals. Project submittals are going to ultimately be individual packages compiled by the contractor and then provided over to the architect, engineer, and the owner for review and approval. All right, some of the minimum submittal standards and content are going to be shown and outlined in the engineering documents and the plans and specifications. So they're going to say, at a minimum, we want to go ahead and see your concrete spec, your stucco spec, your waterproofing spec, your tile spec, the whole nine, at a bare minimum. More is better, obviously, for transparency, because there's a lot of items that are going to be working together, a lot of building components that need to marry to each other. And if you have anything that may not be compatible, that's going to lead to some problems. May not lead to problems right now, but it'll certainly down the line and potentially within the warranty period or even outside of it, you will have some issues. And at that point in time, it's going to be way more expensive to go ahead and fix than it is on the front end. Right? I mean, if you take anything away from this presentation, ultimately plan, so that, and you have sufficient detail so that you're making your life as easy as possible during the course of construction. The AIA is going to stipulate a maximum of 10 business days for the submittal review. These packages could be 1 page, they could be 100 pages, especially if they're going to be including items like an NOA, which is going to be a notice of approval, which usually is going to correspond to, let's say, like a window system, a door system, a roof system that's going to have all your actual tests that says, hey, we are using XYZ window, it has to be installed in this fashion, and here's a testing report of how it performed, and it is good to go, signed and sealed by that engineer that did the work. Some other examples, like I said, you have concrete with repair mortars, stucco, but also including bonding agents if you need it, roofing material, underlayment, accessories, NOAs, other items, and sample warranties are also going to be critical as well. Warranties can also be a separate topic. Warranties are going to be very important in doing any project, because ultimately, if you're spending your money, you want to be spending it in the right way, especially on behalf of your peers. And you want to make sure that in the event, if something happens, you're covered. Some of these projects can be very expensive, and you want to make sure you have some belt and suspenders to protect the association or your home in the event something goes wrong. Now, there are varying levels of warranties. Okay, you can have something as basic as a material-only warranty, meaning that it's only going to cover the actual material. And the best example I have for this is going to be a planter. Okay, a box planter that has a large royal palm in it. Okay, so a 40-foot palm tree in there. You did the waterproofing not too long ago, and your warranty only covers the material only warranty. Now you have the planter starts leaking. You don't know why, but you're going in to investigate. To go ahead and figure out the why, you're going to need to pull out the 40-foot palm. You're going to need to pull out all the dirt. You're going to need to expose the waterproofing. And then you're going to need to determine whether or not it was a material defect. So this was mixed wrong in the factory and it was applied. If you find that, then you're only going to get compensated for whatever that square footage is for the waterproofing material. So that's going to be pennies on the dollar, as you can imagine, because you also have to put back all the soil and put back that big old palm. Now that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is you can have an NDL warranty. So a no dollar limit warranty. And that means that it would cover the palm. It would cover the dirt. It would cover the labor and the materials to get there to a no dollar limit. Obviously, you're going to be paying a premium for that approach. So in the design phase of everything, when you're meeting with your designer, understanding where you want to be in that spectrum, whether or not you want to have a 10-year product, a 5-year product, a 20-year product, if it's even possible, that's going to set the bounds as to what is available even on the warranty standpoint of things. Usually for, I would say, like a recommendation for like decks, like when you have like split slab construction where you have a structural deck, a waterproofing layer, and a topping slab or finishes or pavers or whatever, what have you, I would strongly recommend like a 10-year at a minimum, because you don't want to be ripping that thing up every 5 years, basically, because that is creating a submerged condition or a enclosed condition that could wreak havoc on the actual material there. Like I said, sliding glass doors and windows for the NOAs, and then finishes. So finishes are usually going to be an owner decision. The designer is going to go ahead and set bounds as far as it needs to meet this performance standard. And that's usually going to be an ASTM performance standard, an AMA performance standard, a certain objective body of, hey, it needs to be commercial rated, generally speaking. But whatever color you want, I don't really think you want an engineer going ahead and picking out whatever color you want for whatever component, personally. That's a very subjective opinion, and that may even be led up to a vote of your community, depending on how your community is structured. All right, let's go to the next one. And now when we receive an actual submittal, it's going to look something like this, or it's going to receive something like this, rather. When the package comes over to, let's say, my desk for review or an engineer's desk for review, they're going to review the entirety, and then they're going to give it a stamp like you see here. On this stamp, it does not say approved anywhere. Okay, the closest thing to that is going to be no exceptions taken, meaning that do it exactly like it says here, and we are okay. If it's going to be corrections noted, we may go ahead and actually make some commentary on the actual package to further highlight what needs to be done with respect to this material, and that box will be checked. If it's a verify, make corrections, and resubmit, this may be a contractor submitting what is called as an approved equivalent or an attempt at an approved equivalent, and it may not exactly line up. Or there may be some warranty questions that may arise, and to keep the project or to keep the process going along, the engineer may go ahead and just say, all right, we'll verify this with the manufacturer to make sure we're okay with the warranty, make whatever corrections are needed, and then finally resubmit. Rejected is pretty obvious. It is non-equivalent, or no, this is not right, can't be used anywhere. Okay, here's a sample of some submittals. We have some pretty common waterproofing that's over here. It's just going to be what looks like some marketing material, but it actually has a lot of good content on there. My primary focus when I go ahead and do a review is mainly looking at the limitation section that you see right here, of where not to put it, because that's where it's going to go ahead and fail, and that's also where you're going to have issues with a warranty. And then on the right, you're going to go ahead and see mainly the black and white testing standards of how well does this perform, and this is going to usually correspond with the designer's plans and specifications there. All right, so and also with the submittals, like I mentioned, the warranty. Here we have an example of a warranty. Now, you want to make sure that every step of the way during the course of the construction project, that the contractor, if you need to have, if it's going to be manufacturer warranty, that the contractor is speaking with the manufacturer's representative to come out on site regularly, provide associated reports, and make sure during the course of the project that all boxes are checked so that you will receive that warranty. Okay, that is not the owner's responsibility. It's the contractor's responsibility, and it's going to be further reinforced by the owner's rep and the engineer, the inspecting engineer or architect. It's not going to cost you a dime. Not going to cost anybody any money for them to go ahead and do this. The manufacturer's happy that you're using the product. So they want to be out there and they want to make sure that everyone is using the product responsibly and in the right manner. And one of the more innocent submittals, what color do you want it? Okay, we're getting towards the last slide over here, and we have our OAC meeting minutes. So our OAC is going to stand for owner, architect, contractor. But remember, architect can also be engineer. These meetings typically occur once a week or bi-weekly, every other week. Depends on the detail of the project, depends on how big it is and whether or not, and how fast the project's actually going. This is the weekly powwow. What has happened? What is happening? What will happen? If a project's not going great or if there's some conflict, this is where the conflict gets hashed out. I will assure you that from that meeting to the minutes, they may look night and day. Okay, meeting minutes certainly won't show the emotion that may have been present in the meeting, but the meeting minutes will keep track of those pending items, of the black and white process of things. So project status, right? Some of those items that are going to be included there. Where are we compared to where we should be? The contractor should be revising the schedule every time something moves, every time there's a hiccup, every time something happens. Contractor is responsible to go ahead and provide an updated schedule. Okay, that can be done on what's called a Gantt chart, which is basically just going to be a running chart of when milestones are happening. Shows the critical path and everything else we spoke about before. If there's any upcoming delays that need to be accounted for, material delays, labor, payment, or if there's an upcoming storm, what is the hurricane protocol? What are the protocols? What's going to happen? Where is the construction going to move next? Do you need to go ahead and notify the building? Do you need to go notify the owners in there to go ahead and get things off their balcony, close their balconies? They can't use a certain space, what have you. Talking about on the front end is going to be paramount, so that plans can be put in place and executed so that this minimizes the overall impact to everyone involved. Change order status, pretty straightforward. Where are we with it? RFI status, same thing. Now, even if answers occur within this meeting with, let's say, things that get tracked like change orders and RFIs, that does not mean that they do not need to close the loop on those actual change orders or RFIs. That is very, very important. So you can talk all you want there, but those RFIs and those change orders need to be closed out, need to be formalized to keep the project going, to make sure that this is objectively moving forward in that path. Payment status, any coordination that's needed between multiple trades, and also where are we in the inspection and reporting process? And this would come into play if there's a third party inspector, let's say just for the special inspections, or if you're dealing with city inspections or Department of Health, DERM, what have you, where are we with that? And understanding where you are there, again, more transparency is going to be better for everyone. And with that, we are done. I'm going to just go ahead and tackling some of the some of the questions that we have on here. Feel free to go ahead and ask however many questions you like. This is the most enjoyable part for me, honestly, when I get to go ahead and be of assistance to you all. All right, we got one over here. It's, do I think that a full-time project manager is critical for an extensive project, or will a part-time do? Devil's in the details there. So it depends on how big is the project. I mean, if you are going to hire a third-party project manager, let's say from any of these project management firms or owner's rep firms, they're not going to be on the property every single day. It's not expected to. But they will be managing it. They will probably be on site anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week. Likely not for the full day, but they'll be on site. You shouldn't necessarily need a babysitter, for lack of a better term. If you do, then you probably have bigger problems. Probably have some contractor problems before anything else. I will say that normally from a structure standpoint, or like a payment structure standpoint of things, when you're dealing with both project managers, owners rep, which is basically the same thing, and architect engineers, when you're in the throes of construction, usually you're going to be dealing with just like a monthly fee from either of those. And it should be as inclusive as possible as they can foresee, but there may be some added costs within there as well. All right, let me go ahead and stop sharing screen. Whoops. Stop sharing. I'll keep on answering these questions. Okay. These pay apps get monthly. I already answered that one. All right. Would you stop work on a job while awaiting an answer to an RFI? Okay. All right. This is a good one. So with that contractual relationship that I made mention of in a design bid build, when there is no contractual relationship between the designer and the contractor, technically, I, as the designer, cannot kick the contractor off the job because I have zero contractual relationship to that contractor. I can recommend to the owner who does have a contractual relationship with them to kick them off or to hold or to stop work or whatever. But we would just be giving recommendations, or any designer would be giving recommendations. Now, you certainly can. If work is to stop, it should be known what you're getting yourself into. You may be exposing yourself to potential delays. So understanding how long the stop work may occur may dictate what your steps are. But this is going to fall in line with critical path item. If it's going to be critical path and you need the answer of what should we be doing before we go ahead and move on to the next step, yeah, work will stop. It's going to have to stop. Okay, what, if anything, protects the owner from GCs not paying subs? Awesome. Okay, so this is what you're going to have payment and performance bonds for. So payment and performance bonds are really going to be there. So payment bonds are going to be put in place for the general contractor paying their subs. Okay, performance bond is going to be for contractor actually performing. So depending on the size of the project, is usually the financial size of the project is what would dictate whether or not you're going to move towards with a bond or not. It certainly should be a discussion item when you're planning the actual project out with your designer or your owner's rep. Bonds are commonplace. You're essentially paying for it in the first place. It's usually, I don't know, about 4% of the actual project value. So it's not that much. But if you have a multi-million-dollar project, it's going to have a corresponding price tag. But I would recommend that. And also, one thing to mention as well is with these payment applications, they should also come with a partial release of lien from the contractor. Okay. So contractor saying, hey, I've done 50% of the project and I'm submitting for 50% of the project. Here is a 50% lien release so that they can't come back and lien the property on that work performed. Okay. Can the association lawyer drop a statement to be added to contractors and subcontractor contracts that no kickbacks of any kind are to be given to anyone? Sorry that I laughed on there. I mean, giving kickbacks. I mean, yeah, I mean that's. You can put anything you want in the actual contract. I will go ahead and state that. I have a contractor who's going to be giving kickbacks. I mean, that's probably not the best business practice, but that's just my 2 cents. But sure, you can put whatever you want in an actual contract. You're making a deal with someone. That's inherently thought, if you're dealing with a proper professional, that they're not going to be giving kickbacks or not going to be doing anything remotely nefarious. But if that's going to be a sticking point, then sure, put it in there. Any responsible contractor would have no problem signing that. Okay, what is the legality of video recording of OAC meetings, sharing them with the membership. Legality, I can't opine on that. Practically, I don't think it'd be worth it. I don't think it'd be great. Ultimately, sharing that level of information with the membership, I mean, 99% of the people likely won't even care. And there are plenty of OAC meetings that are relatively boring. That's why you have the meeting minutes. I think that's honestly probably better to go ahead and share if you wanted to share. But usually what we see is going to be like monthly or bi-monthly updates or quarterly updates, let's say, to the community. That will be an adaptation of the meeting minutes. And even during those meetings, you can certainly ask your attorney to be there. You can ask a representative of the contractor to be there. You can have your designer there as well if you'd like. It all depends on what level of information you want to transfer over to the greater membership. And unless you're dictated by your bylaws to go ahead and give a certain amount of detail, I don't believe that there is a requirement as to how much detail you need to be providing. Okay. Okay. The process of working with a team approach, architect and/or engineer and design, is compensation based for these services normally determined by a percentage of the project? I would say it is not normally a percentage of the project. Ultimately, the designer, and in most of the design bid builds, at least from a financial structure, you're normally dealing with, let's say, like a lump sum for the overall design to get you the permit plans. And then you're usually going to be dealing with like a monthly fee during the course of construction. And just like with like an owner's rep, you're likely dealing with like a pre-construction monthly rate and then a construction monthly rate. I know there are some professionals out there that do go ahead and do a percentage on the actual construction value. There's nothing to say that you can't do that, but that just means that let's arbitrarily call it 10% of the construction value. But that means that at every change order, there's an added 10% going to that designer. So just be mindful of that. Then you're kind of tying from an optics standpoint of things, you're kind of tying the designer closer to the contractor. If you're trying to keep all parties separate, then that eliminates that approach. How do I get the notice of commencement removed for work completed? Well, the notice of commencement is really just letting the municipality know that you're starting work. That's basically it. So you're dealing with the municipality and it's going to be corresponding to a permit, and that permit's responsibility is the contractor. So deal with the contractor, go ahead and get that lifted. It is their obligation to go ahead and deal with any sort of issues with the municipality. And also there may be unforeseen items that come up during the course of construction, which are important to go ahead and be mindful of. I mean, it's going to happen. Think about, you're going to go ahead and do some surgery and you haven't cracked your chest open before. You think you're going in for one thing, there may be something else hidden there that makes sense to tackle while you're there. Or use a car analogy, what have you. But with restoration and restoration alone, that is going to have a higher level of risk than brand new construction, because you're dealing with something that's in existence and some things may truly be hidden. So that really just comes to the financial planning of the project as to what sort of contingencies are you putting in place to make sure you're minimizing the amount of times you're going back to the community or the membership for added funds, because I'm sure that's the last thing anybody wants to go ahead and do. Can a wall be built by a homeowner with an accessory setback line? Likely not, unless there's something exceptionally unique. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to grab a few more here. Okay, can one or more owners attend meetings with contract alongside a board member supervising the project? Yeah, I mean, essentially, if you want to, certainly you can open it up if you like to open it up. You just want to make sure that you're moving forward with the actual progress of the project, and so everyone is aware. Okay, here's someone actually uploads the meeting minutes to their community website. All right, that's not a bad idea. Okay. We're in the middle. All right, here's an interesting one. We're in the middle of a contract or contracting a project, and the lawyer wants to go ahead and exclude Chapter 558 from the AIA and add supplemental document to cover these items. Any thoughts? All right, so for anyone that is not aware, the Florida statute, Chapter 558, is really a construction defect statute, meaning that in the event that there are going to be some construction defects, however they come up, the association or the owner has the opportunity to go ahead and review those, produce a report, and to present them to the opposing side to figure out what is going to go, what resolution will occur. So in that scenario, I mean, there's a lot of, I know it's shorthand, but if that attorney is adding still language in that same respect to still cover that event, that may be okay. But again, I'm not an attorney. But you certainly want to have that opportunity or that vessel to go after if you need to. Obviously, the hope is that you don't need to, and that enough communication and working together is going to be sufficient. But there may be times that there won't. And usually, in those scenarios, if you know you're not having a successful project, the easiest negotiating point, if you will, is going to be arguing over the retainage, right? Maybe don't release the retainage because the contractor has done bad work. That's a potential, and the retainage on a large scale project is going to be pretty substantial. If that could be the resolution right there, then that's the resolution. Certainly go ahead and have your association counsel involved to go ahead and navigate through that process. But there, again, you're making a deal. So that can be made in a variety of different ways. And this presentation will certainly be shared. Rest assured, I believe we said in the beginning, but yeah, you guys are going to have a copy of that. So you can refer back to it whenever you can't sleep, and hopefully that'll put you to sleep pretty fast. Okay, and I'm trying to see if I can grab maybe one more. I think we're good. I think I've tackled like 95% of them. So thank you everybody for the great questions. I really hope that it was beneficial to you all. And if anything else arises, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to my staff. We'll be happy to go ahead and help.
Thanks for watching. For more great educational content, click the subscribe button now.